Oh, the devil are we? I'm Matt. More Ross Coulthart. More reality check. Let's check it out.
G'day and welcome to Reality Check
G'day, Ross.
Q&A. I'm your host, Ross Coulthart, and this is the opportunity for you guys to ask me the hard questions. Here to ask me, as usual, of course, my host and colleague, Megan Allrider. G'day, Megan. How are you?
Ross, I'm great. I just have to start with a quick apology to you. I usually have your book on the ladder right behind me.
Right.
And when I came down,
it got eaten by aliens or taken away by the dog?
It must.
We decided, Ross, that we're going to replace it with something a little bit more, I don't know, upmarket, 50 Shades of Grey. I don't know.
But when I was looking for it, I said to myself, you know, Megan, it has to be in plain sight. So I wanted to make sure I gave you the plug today.
Well, thank you for that gratuitous plug. Thank you so much for that. It's nice. Basically, one does not make money out of books, I promise you. So it's always nice to get a plug.
I'm sure one could disagree. I'm sure one such as Stephen King or Dean Koontz or J.K. Rowling, to name but a million people who've made loads of money out of books.
All right, let me fire away at you. I'm going to start with an email coming in from Chris. He said to us, "Hello, Ross. Hope you've been keeping well. I have two questions for you. Have you ever had to walk away from a lead because it was too dangerous or unverifiable? And what's the most compelling piece of evidence you've seen that hasn't been made public yet? Thank you for your tireless work on the subject."
Well, I get the feeling there that he's not going to... There's two different things. There's unverifiable and dangerous. Those are two very, very different things. Unverifiable meaning some guy's making claims. I can't, basically, there's no supporting evidence to say that these claims have got any weight in reality or basis in reality. And the other one being dangerous, meaning, I could get into legal ramifications or even physical threats of, danger to life. So, yeah. Giant UFO, Ross.
Oh, that's a very ambit claim question. I've walked away from leads. I mean, journalists walk away from leads all the time, largely because we can't corroborate them. We have to operate according to a very strict, rigorous set of rules in order to avoid running nonsense. And I get told things all the time. There are a lot of people who get very frustrated that I don't elevate certain people, certain commentators who make sweeping assertions. One of the most difficult ones is people who contact me, and I actually have some respect for these people who purport to be in some kind of psychic or telepathic communication with a non-human intelligence, and they want me to put their message out to the great ether, you guys, and they think that what they've got is the absolute truth of what's really going to happen. And
lots of people make loads of claims. Doesn't mean everyone's telling the truth. Or it could be that they're telling what they believe is the truth. Doesn't mean it's true.
Difficulty is I've sat down and put all these things onto a timeline with about 100 different people telling me different things, and they often disagree. One of the good examples about that is the claims of catastrophic events that are meant to be imminent. People say 2027, people say 2034. I've been told
6-7. Another one of those TikTok, millennial generation. Let's put something out there, and then everyone will jump on the bandwagon like sheep and just put loads of memes out there.
Certain
makes me tired.
Things I've been told, calamitous geologic events, calamitous.
Not blaming millennials for that, because let's face it, a boomer generation, every generation's done the same. Something will go out there, it becomes popular. Oh, let's all jump on the bandwagon and just think for yourselves.
Human-induced events. I'm not really in a position to be able to say with any certainty that I can give any of them any credibility. And I think we do have to, we're often accused by the debunker nutjobs of basically straying too far on the fringe on the
It's basically calling out everyone who uses Reddit there.
Show. And frankly, I think we're extremely cautious and rigorous and as objective as we can be. What an amazing time, by the way, in science and UAPs. Who would have thought a year ago that my friend and colleague, Dr. Beatrice Villarol, would be putting...
I've heard that name pronounced 18 different ways over the last couple of months. Villarreal, which is, I think it's a city in Spain, isn't it? Villarol, Vitriol, I don't know.
2 peer-reviewed papers into the scientific reports out of the Nature publications group. You know, something that's been exposed to that degree of peer review and rigor would have been thought of as unthinkable a year ago. So we are making advances, you know, there are things happening, but we still have to stick to rigorous peer review and checking and corroboration. And
just for anyone who doesn't know who Beatrice Villarreal is, recently she's come out and did a bit of work. So looking at the plates for photographs taken of, like, say, the sky, the space, the stars, etc. I'm butchering this, I know. But basically looking and going, and then we looked a bit later, like maybe a month, 2 months later, maybe even a year, and the same stars or the same light patterns weren't there. Now, if you remember, back in the 50s, this was before Sputnik or any of the other satellites or man-made objects were actually in orbit that we know of. But to be fair, I think when they say that we know of, I think declassified satellites that were up there that were secret back in the day would have been declassified by now. And what you were finding is that what it appears to be is shiny, flat, reflective surfaces shining back on these pictures in orbit around the Earth. And this was a time when there was no man-made structures up there in space. And it's been peer-reviewed. And this isn't conjecture, it's science. So I think that was really compelling in terms of, if you could prove that there's evidence that there was metallic reflective objects in orbit around the Earth in the 1950s before we even put any satellites or anything up there, then what the hell could it have possibly been?
That's the main thing why I get cautious. A lot of people ask me if I've been threatened. No, not really. I mean, I think, thankfully, because I have an audience, you guys are interested and engaged. I think the days when the national security state or whoever is responsible for this cover-up felt that they could intimidate somebody like me, I hope, well and truly over, because we would broadcast it far and wide if anybody tried to gag us. In fact, bring it on, guys. We'd love a fight.
Okay.
Nice knowing you, Ross.
Our next question actually relates to Dr. Villarol. Hi, Megan and Ross. Could there be a connection between these metal spheres discovered by Dr. Villarol and those photographed and videoed by the Custodian File channel? Could these metal spheres be observing us both in outer space and in our skies? David.
Could there be a connection between these metal spheres discovered by Dr. Villarreal and those photographed and videoed by the Custodian File channel? Could these metal spheres be observing us both in outer space and in the skies? I don't think... Correct me if I'm wrong here, anybody, but I don't think she came out and said that there were spheres, particularly, just reflective surfaces.
Look, it's not just the Custodian channel that's doing this. I mean, there are many channels on YouTube that are reporting on these metallic spheres that have been seen all over the world. I get videos almost every week from people showing me images of what people claim are metallic spheres with no visible means of propulsion. There's no propellers, there's no turbines, no jets. There's no indication of what's propelling these objects, but they are moving silently, fast, clearly under intelligent control all over the world. And yes, I do think that we should be examining and investigating the hypothesis that there is a link between what Dr. Beatrice Villarol has detected in geostationary Earth orbit, around about, 40,000 kilometres away from the planet. There are these highly specular, reflective, flat surfaces that are clearly there, artificial structures that were there in the 1950s and I suspect are still there. And isn't it interesting that...
I don't know. I mean, can you imagine that something unknown would have been in orbit since the 1950s. I mean, they would have been fell to Earth. There would have been photographed. There's astronomers that have been up there. There's been students that have put a camera on a balloon and launched it to the edge of space. There's been live feeds from SpaceX, NASA, the European Space Agency. China's got their own program. It would have come out if they're still in orbit. I can't imagine that was a secret that could ever have been maintained, to be honest.
Beatrice has discovered this with good science.
And he said there, flat surfaces, not spherical surfaces.
But you've got space-based telescopes that would be perfectly capable of getting imagery of these objects, and just witness the deafening silence from organisations like NASA, James Webb Telescope, other space-based telescope operations that are being operated by some of the three-letter agencies. They could resolve this scientific mystery very quickly. Why don't they? Do they already know the answer?
Maybe it's not a mystery to be cracked. Maybe there's nothing to it. But what I would say is, I reckon, yeah, they are complicit. I reckon NASA is probably just another arm of the Department of Defense, if I'm honest. They probably do some shady shit, like satellites being put up there, payloads, espionage, spying on, foreign nations as part of their mission objectives. So I can't imagine that they're just basically, yes, we're just exploring space and doing science on the space station. They'll be up to some shady shit, no doubt.
That's the kind of questions I think we should be asking. I think we're at a point now in the disclosure narrative where it's becoming patently clear that Congress has become captive, as it always has been, to the national security state, and we're not going to see any real activism from most of the people in Congress. There are the heroes who we all respect and admire, mainly the members of the Oversight Transparency Committee. But the simple fact is Congress has been nobbled. The key committee chairpeople have basically been nobbled, and more importantly, their staffers are captive to the future jobs they're looking forward to in respective private aerospace companies. It's quite depressing and sad.
Nobbled? They've been nobbled. That's a term I've not heard for decades. Nobbled. As in, like, they've been compromised, nobbled. I was thinking of that scene in Misery, where she puts a wooden plank between his ankles and basically sledgehammers his feet. Oh, what a scene that was. Just for everybody who watches that. That's hobbled. Yeah, that's hobbled, not nobbled.
And so the best hope for us all is good science, is good, rigorous, public, community-based investigation that breaks open this walnut. And I do think that's going to happen. Just keep on chipping on.
And I will say, thank you, Ross. Thank you. You called it Congress, not the Congress. It used to always wind me up. He was probably right to say it, but it always used to wind me up.
Okay, we'll go to our next question. Hi, Ross and Megan. Can you tell me your thoughts on SETI? I find it strange that some leading scientists such as Gary Nolan and the like are saying NHI are real, and yet SETI are spending millions on searching for the wow signal. It makes no sense to me. Don't they talk to each other? They can't both be right. Love the show. Martin and Allison in the UK.
I don't think they're mutual. They don't have to be mutually exclusive. They can be mutually exclusive. Is that even the right term? I don't know. What I'm saying is, there's no reason why you couldn't say we've got a non-human presence on this earth, and we believe that's real. So what's point in spending any money looking for signals out in space? Because we don't know what the NHI presence here. There's a move now. They used to call it UFOs. It's now UAP. Is it called UAP because they think it's not coming from another planet? It might be something natural to this planet. It might be plasma-based life forms. It might be interdimensional. It might be is it intraterrestrial, where it's like maybe they're living under the surface of the Earth or in the oceans of the Earth. There's raft of possibilities that we've not even thought of. But the search for extraterrestrial intelligence is the science that if we're a race that is sending signals out into the cosmos, and we have been since the 1940s or 30s, then surely other civilizations would as well. So I don't think there's a reason why you wouldn't do both avenues of investigation.
Look,
let's see what Ross thinks.
We've done a previous reality check on SETI. We interviewed the boss of SETI, and whilst I respect any scientific investigation into the subject of possible extraterrestrial life, I have asked, and I did ask at the time, why is SETI so focused on radio signals? Would a highly advanced alien civilization likely be using radio signals to communicate when they move at the best at the speed of light, and frankly, they take a hell of a long time to cover multi-hundred light years across a solar system? It's not the best way to communicate.
But end of the day, the speed of light is definite. So nothing moves faster than the speed of light that we know of. So no matter what method of communications these civilizations would use, we're still only going to be able to see whatever's reaching us at the speed of light. And we have been sending radio signals out for, nearly 100 years now, in terms of radio waves and television broadcasts. So why would another civilization not go through that same level? I mean, laser communications is probably coming. Other communications in terms of quantum entanglement is probably coming. How do you monitor for quantum entanglement? Don't know if you can.
We know now, theoretically, that it is possible to communicate using quantum communications, entangled photon qubits. And the whole possibility exists that it would be possible to have a communication system using entangled photons that could instantaneously communicate across vast distances of the universe. And I'm not the one that thought of this. There's actually a great paper that I recommend to you. I'm a fan of this paper. It's called On Interstellar Quantum Communication and the Fermi Paradox by a guy called Lathan Boyle. And he was part of the Higgs Center for Theoretical Physics. And back in 2024, he actually wrote a paper that speculated that the reason we're not hearing from aliens in terms of communications on SETI is because they don't use radio waves. Perhaps they're using quantum communications. And he suggested that interstellar quantum communication is the likely way it's happening, and this would render their signals effectively silent or undetectable to our current classical radio or optical detection systems. And it's funny, because when we asked SETI about this, they've spent probably, I think, last estimates was around about $500 million, some of that private money, public contributions, since 1960 through to the present day. So over 65 years, $500 million has been spent on radio communications interception to see if we can find alien civilizations that might be communicating using radio waves. And what have we heard? Nada. Okay, there's the wow signal, but that's still up in the air. Bottom line is, I don't think, if there are aliens, and I suspect there are, I don't think they're using radio signals at all. It doesn't.
It's probably right there. I mean, if you think about every permutation of life that you can imagine exists out in the cosmos, telepathy being a communication method, is there a limit on telepathy in terms of, can I communicate with someone who's stood 2 feet away, or can I communicate with that same person who's 200 miles away? Quantum entanglement, like I say, instantaneous communication across vast distances. So it's maybe got a point, but at what point do you then turn around and go, we've done this long enough now, it's not working, let's just stop?
Make a lot of sense. Why use radio signals when you can use, why go analog when you can go digital?
Correct.
Because there's all people still using analog TVs.
Let's go to X. This is Ben. For reality check, does Ross know of any undersea structures that have been encountered by any Navy? Does he know if there are designated no-go areas for the Navy to go in regarding potential undersea USO activity? Fantastic work as always, both of you.
That's a really good question. Yes, I am privy. There's a guy from the Royal Australian Navy who contacted me who will not go on the record, but it's second-hand information, but it's pretty reliable. His dad, who was in the Navy, told him that there are areas off the Australian coast that are, how does one say this, known to the Australian Navy. And it was really interesting because sadly, his dad has passed away in the interim, but he gave me an enormous amount of detail about a location off the Australian coast, and I would love to go and investigate it. If anybody's got a submarine and a sonar system, we'll go.
Well, to be fair, if the Australian Navy are saying this is an area we do not want to go, I'm pretty sure, Ross, you don't want to get on a submarine and go and investigate that area.
Out there and check it out. I'm a huge fan of the idea, the theory that there are megalithic civilizations, including perhaps the idea of Atlantis, that have been buried as, tectonic movements have happened on the Earth. And I've always been interested in a case that happened about 2 or 3 years ago. There was a couple that came forward and they had allegedly using high beam sonar discovered pyramids and entire cities with streets under the ground just off the coast of Cuba. And like so many of these stories, the story came and went, zizzed off. But there are the most amazing sonar images of what do look like, I think it's about 600 meters under the ocean, they do look like pyramids underneath the ocean and straight streets. These are not naturally occurring objects as one.
So if anyone's got any, like 600 meters is that, I mean, it's not like a unreachable distance. For anybody who's an enthusiast, I don't know if that's a reachable distance that's deep sea diving, I don't know. But yeah, off the coast of Cuba. But then again, when they say off the coast of Cuba, you think, that's only a small area to search, when you could be talking about hundreds of thousands of square miles.
Cuban scientists tried to suggest at the time. So yes, I'm fascinated by the idea also of megalithic civilizations and structures. There's also, don't forget, that weird shape that appeared on Google Maps, which was underwater. I'm not quite sure how Google Maps could represent something that was underwater. It was underwater just off the coast of California. And I think from memory, Rear Admiral retired Tim Gallaudet mentioned that it was a subject of interest for him. And interestingly enough, soon after it became public, it was quietly blurred on Google Maps.
I think Google Maps sounds better.
Now, just a bit of a heads up, we are going to be taking a very close interest in underwater submerged objects on a future Reality Check special for News Nation, and you're going to be hearing a whole lot more from us about the subject of underwater objects. There are no-go areas. I've spoken to people in our submarine service in Australia, people in the submarine service in the US. There are definite no-go areas in parts of the Pacific and the Atlantic Ocean, but more often than not, they're ranges that are used for gunnery practice and military training.
Well, if you want an area to be cordoned off and say, do not go here, you make out that it's a training range or it's used for some sort of dangerous operation, which is why if you go there, you're likely going to end up dead. So you would make out basically that you can't do that. And it's like is it Antarctica where they basically said you can't go there without special approval because of protection of the ecosystem? Bollocks, quite frankly, pardon me French. I think that is a lie.
But of course, one of the best ways to hide something that you don't want the public to know about would be to secure it off as a secure military area. So yeah, maybe there is something down there. We just don't know. I have had a succession of submariners contact me from US, British, French, and Australian submarine services who have quietly told me about confrontations with enormous objects underwater, often travelling, believe it or not, at faster than the speed of sound in water. which is mind-boggling if you think about it. So, yeah, I am fascinated by the idea that there are, if you think about it, so much of the Earth's surface is covered with water. And if you were a non-human civilization trying to stay out of sight, but also wanting to monitor these primitive apes up on the land, the water would be a good place to hide.
I'm going to leave it there for part one. The underwater thing is looking more and more interesting. I think there's always been... Is it Shag Harbour? I'm probably Sag Harbour, maybe. Not Shag Harbour. Like Austin Bloody Powers or something. There was a case where someone thought a small plane had crashed into Sag Harbour, and it turned out that there was no plane that had fell. They thought it was a UFO, and then there was further reports that the US Navy went there to recover said UFO, and another UFO recovered it, sort of in a repair operation and recovery operation. How much truth to that? Don't know, but it's a famous case. There's been lights reported in various places throughout the world. There's always been mysteries, and I think even Louis Elizondo came out at some point and said there was some sort of, I don't know if it was a 4chan leak of somebody who said that there was a underwater, basically a manufacturing facility where UFOs that you see, which are all shapes and sizes, they're being manufactured in this underwater manufacturing facility, and it's manufactured to do a certain job and then returns to base and then basically gets disintegrated. And if you approach it, it will defend itself, and it moves locations. How much of that is true? Don't know. Louis Elizondo mentioned it, and mentioned that they've got evidence of things that are moving very, 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 very fast in our oceans. Faster than what, way faster than any technology that we've got. So I think the underwater thing is very interesting. Very interesting indeed. So, yeah, some good stuff in there. I will see you for part 2. See what else Ross has got to say and what some of these questions have got to say. I'll leave it there. Thank you very much. You take care.